Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Reclaiming My Life podcast. We are so excited tonight. But before we dive into our special episode with our special guests, please meet my beautiful co authors, Miss Joanne Bellamy,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reclaiming My Life podcast.
Dr. Tiffany Tyson,
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reclaiming My Life podcast.
and Mrs. Tramika Cooper.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Reclaiming My Life podcast.
Thank you so much, ladies. And tonight, our special guest is Miss Kimberly Fields. Welcome, Kimberly.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on Reclaiming My Life. Kim. Look, let me say this. We are about to launch a new book, After the Storm. After the Storm is a sequel to Reclaiming My Life. And Miss Kimberly Fields here is one of the co-authors in After the Storm. And she is here tonight to share some of her story. So Kim, don't give us too much because we definitely want them to buy the book, and we also want them to come to our live launch. So please share your story with us.
So my story is just about the loss of both of my parents. Both died suddenly without notice. My dad died about back in 1997, and my mom died suddenly in 2019 while we were out at a program for my son. So each of them died in a way that was traumatic to me, in that I did not have an opportunity to say goodbye or to have those last words or to spend any time, you know, I don't know, cleaning up stuff before they go. And so
Mhm.
those deaths, those sudden deaths, have been very traumatic for me. They call it complex PTSD. And so I am at this point, this opportunity that you all blessed me with to be able to write for this book has taken me on a journey of rediscovering myself without my parents. I sort of feel like an orphan, although I'm technically not an orphan because I had the benefit of my parents for so long. But it makes me feel sort of alone and isolated because I am also an only child and I also
Mhm.
have an only child. And so it has been a difficult journey, but I have also realized as I process those deaths, the strength that both of my parents had in their life. And so it has been helpful for me to kind of go through this journey, even though every time I read the story myself, I cry. But
Mhm.
certainly, it has helped me to kind of, I think, I have not had a chance to really kind of grieve. And so I think this has brought me to a place of being able to grieve at this point.
Mhm. Wow. You really did. You said a lot there. And, I actually can relate to, losing your parents, and for me, losing my mom, because that's really the only parent I ever had. So losing my mom, and it's been 7 years, I still feel alone. I never said I felt like an orphan, but just feeling alone or, like, where do I belong now?
Hmm.
Although you have other family members, it's like your world is just not the same when you lose a parent, because
True.
they are the ones, well, your mother is the one that birthed you and nurtured you, and, the one you could call on to talk about nothing, and you're just like, who do I belong to?
Hmm.
Where do I fit in? I get that, so, I appreciate that you have written this story, and you wrote so much more to the story, and maybe you'll share some more. But at this point, I'm going to ask some of my co-authors, just from what you've shared thus far, if they have any questions that they would like to ask you. And then I'll bring you back on and, let you tell us a little more of the story. So if you would, Dr. Tyson, please join us.
Hello, my co-author. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am doing well. So I'm an only child as well, so I definitely can relate to that aspect. Now, growing up as an only child, what type of relationship did you have with your parents?
So, my father was not really involved a lot when I was younger. I mean, I knew him, I spent time with him, but we didn't have a close relationship. However, a couple of years before he died, we sort of reconnected and we were able to kind of talk. He shared that, he was sorry that he didn't show up as a dad. But once we came to sort of meeting of the minds, it was as if time transcended and we reconnected in a different way. The embracing that I needed in my life. He was able to hug me, to
Oh,
hold me, and we were able to play together. I remember shortly before I moved from Maryland the first time, I had a birthday party at his house. I think I was turning like 25, and we had like a water gun fight.
ah,
And he participated with us. And so from that moment on, he was like my best friend. I felt like before that nobody ever really loved me. Like I was never just okay myself. And then when we connected in that way, I was like, wow, somebody really loves me. And so
that's beautiful.
that was how things went with us. And with my mom, um, I am in her death learning to understand her a little bit of different. My mom was just sort of not emotionally available. I don't know what happened in her childhood, but something must have occurred because she wasn't a touchy feely person.
Okay.
It was always about how things appeared. And, I always struggled with not being good enough and wondering, if a parent can't love you, how do you walk through life with that? And so in her death, I climbed into the bed with her. She wasn't able to talk. And I was able to say the things to her that I always wished that I could have said.
Wonderful.
And so that gave me some catharsis,
Yes.
although I didn't get to hear back from her. And so now I understand, being a single parent, it's tough. And we do the best that we can. And I think she did her best under the circumstances.
So glad that you were able to at least say those words to her during that time, and glad that you were able to develop that bond with your father as well. That was really nice.
Hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your question, Dr. Tyson.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And at this time, we'll bring on Miss Joanne Bellamy.
Hello, Kimberly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, gorgeous. I can
Thank
kind of
you.
relate to you too because I am an only child as well, and I only have one child also. But I
Hmm.
wanted to ask you, Dr. Tyson um, had brought up about how your relationship was with your parents. But I wanted to ask you what point or what took place where you felt like you didn't fit in, like you were an orphan. You know what I'm saying?
So I feel like
So,
it was after my mom's death that I started to feel that way because, I don't have any roots now. I don't have any connection to anything. I feel sort of like I'm just kind of floating in this world. My dad's family is gone, and my mom, she has some siblings, but those
wow.
relationships are sort of as they are.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I've never felt connected. I am a person who loves to have touch and hugs and things like that, but I don't come from a family that does any of those things. So I
Right.
feel sort of like I'm not, like I'm going to miss out on having those experiences in life. And so I'm really working on learning how to love myself right now.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Kimberly, so much.
Hmm.
I can
Thank you,
relate to
Miss
that.
Joanne.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, now we will have Miss Tramika Cooper come on.
Hello, Miss Kimberly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So, you kind of hit on my question when you was speaking to Miss Tyson, but As a only child, how did you cope with feeling alone or unloved?
So the feeling alone part, I really didn't struggle with when I was younger. I kind
Hmm.
of liked being alone. I actually, my son is currently away at boarding school, and I have really enjoyed like coming into my own space and trying to recover from the day, which I haven't had an opportunity to do in the last 14 years. But feeling alone when I was younger, I had other cousins and things like that. And my grandmother lived until I was well into my 20s. So she was my best friend. She was the person who basically raised me. And we always lived in the house with her from the time that I can remember. And when she remarried after my grandfather died, she only moved around the corner. And so I had her in my life. So I didn't really feel a void then. It was more after she passed and that I just couldn't connect with my mom. And so I really just sort of lived a life of just trying to be small and to do the things that I thought would be acceptable to my mom, because maybe if I did it this way, she'd love me, or maybe if I did it that way, she'd love me or embrace me. But she just wasn't able to embrace me in the way that I needed to be embraced. And so now in her death, I'm recovering from a lot of those things and trying to just understand what she may have gone through. She had her struggles, you know. She was a divorcee. I'm a divorcee. That's hard. And and then having the responsibility of a child and limited supports and things like that after my grandmother passed, it was difficult. So I'm still working through some of that, but I can understand her a little bit differently, and I feel more compassionate towards her now in her death.
Right. I can definitely understand where you're coming from. I lost both of my parents 13 hours apart 9 years ago. And
Oh,
I definitely understand where you're coming from. You feel a void now. Um, and growing up, I didn't have, my family didn't believe in the hugs and all that. So I'm with you on that. I thank God that you have, come through that. You have reclaimed your life. Thank
yes,
you.
I'm working on
Yes, I hear you, Kim. You're working on it.
Hmm.
And that's what it's all about, because at the end of the day, even if you haven't reclaimed, you're reclaiming. It's a slow process, but you are reclaiming. You now know what it is that you need to do. You're recognizing, some of the things that you didn't feel or acknowledge before. So you're definitely reclaiming. So we praise God for that. I wanted to ask you, growing up and feeling, what you were feeling. Your mother was not emotionally available. You didn't really have the relationship with your father. So when you became a mother, how did that, if at all, affect your relationship with your son? Do you feel that you were like your mom, or were you totally different?
So I will say that I'm in the journey on that one as well. But when he was first younger, I think I overcompensated, because his father walked out on us when he was 7 months. And so I just did everything. I loved on him, I held on him, I kissed him, I bought gifts, everything that he needed. He's not in need of anything. So I feel like I overcompensated trying to fit the bill of, mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
However, as he has become a teenager, and during COVID, some things came out that have really been disturbing. So I really wanted to write about that, but the journey is still ongoing. So I did not. But I'm seeing now that my mother is really ingrained in me. And there are ways that I am dealing with him that I am now starting to see that I was affected from a trauma place that is so
Mm-hmm.
significant that on some level I'm struggling with connecting with him in this
Mm-hmm.
space of this teenage space and the trauma that he has experienced. And so I find myself battling the desire to be different from my mom, but I open
Mm-hmm.
my mouth sometimes and she just comes right out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just like, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. So we are
Right.
both in therapy and we are both working on, you know, these things. And he's a
Mm-hmm.
14-year-old, and so it's very difficult. He's not my little cute boy anymore. And he's 6 feet tall. And, I'm looking at him and I'm like, he's 14, but he looks like a grown man. And so I struggle in that space. I really
Mhm.
am trying to untangle myself from all of the beliefs because I don't know myself. This is what is coming
Mhm.
out is that I don't know who I am because I've always struggled to be good enough for my mom. And when he came, I wanted to be a better mom than my mom, but I never have really discovered what it is that I want and need for myself. So there has been a lot of conflict that has been showing up in that space, but he
Mhm.
is doing well so far. He's at Pine Forge, and he is doing well so far, and we're working through the process.
And that's good. And it's also good to hear that you're both in therapy, because, I'm sure that he needs therapy as well, because like you said, you're struggling just to know you. And, I really appreciate, you acknowledging all of this. And, the reason why I asked that question is because it's a fact. We learn what we live, and sometimes it can be difficult, if you learned, lived in a space where, you weren't receiving the affection and all of the I love you and, kiss me goodnight and all of that kind of stuff, then how do you all of a sudden know, oh, this is what I do with my son? That's not how I grew up. But
Mm-mm.
sometimes, even just by listening to friends or um, other people that we hang around and we see, how they are with their families, we can learn there as well. So sometimes it's either, that's like if we have parents that are alcoholics or parents that, are physically abusive, we may say towards one another, not towards their children. We may say, well, when I grow up, I never want to be like this. And we just
Mm-hmm.
don't do it. When I grow up, I want to make sure I have a good man, not a man that's going to slap me around the way my dad does my mom. And then, of course, sometimes it's the other way around. This is what I saw my dad do. So, that's why I definitely wanted to ask you that question. But before we wrap up, I'm going to see if any of my other co authors have any additional questions before we close out.
Well, I just want to say I applaud you, first of all, for telling your story in After the Storm by it being so fresh and so new. And you're still learning, as you said, you're learning what to do in this journey. You're still processing. And so I applaud you for being brave enough just to come on and not only share your story in the book, but also on the podcast tonight.
Thank you.
I would like to know, do you have any hobbies or anything that to kind of take your mind off things?
So I am rediscovering myself in so many different ways. So I like to roller skate. So I'm going to be planning on going roller skating on Wednesdays with the adults. And I want to learn how to horseback ride and I want to learn how to swim. So I'm putting those things in place so that I can get those things done while my son is away. So those are the things that I really enjoy. I love my job, so that's like not even work for me. And we have a good cohort at the office. So those things are helpful for me in my day to day as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I applaud you and I love you very much because you
Thank
touch
you.
my heart because my mother has never been the type of uh woman to tell me she loved me. My mother just started telling me this a couple of years ago. I love you because she never knew how to tell me that because I came up in a abusive with abusive parents and they would fight and like Miss Claudia was saying and then when you grow up he says I'm not going to be that way and I'm not going to train my child to do that. So I'm with a lot of stuff on your saying what you're saying. And I just thank God for you and he's gonna see you all the way out to the end and be with you and walk with you every step of the way. I can relate. I'm
Thank
like
you as well.
Tramika. I can relate to what you're saying. I really can because lots of time people don't know everything there is about us. But I just want to share
Hmm.
that with you that you are definitely not alone. You're definitely
Well, thank
not
you for
alone.
sharing. And that's what if I could say, that's kind of where I have struggled the most is that I'm sort of isolated. My
Yeah.
cousin and I were talking about that tonight. And so you don't know that other people are struggling when you don't have connections with people. And
Right.
so
Right.
Right.
it's kind of it's refreshing to sort of be able to be in this space. So I appreciate you guys.
Yes.
Yes,
We appreciate
absolutely.
you.
That's yes, that's exactly why we're here on this platform, Kim.
Yes.
Letting
Yes.
people know that they're not alone. And
That's
even
right.
right here with just a few of us, I mean, you've heard, you know, that I struggled with grief. Tramika struggled with grief, Miss Joanne, you all share some of the same similar things growing up.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
this is a good space for people, and the message that we're pouring out and praying that we are inspiring people, to let them know that they too can share their stories, that, there are other people, that are going through or have gone through some of the same
Yes.
trials and trauma, because it's important when we don't share. I love to say it. I really got this from TD Jakes. When we don't share, it makes people
Yes.
feel like, um, well, God, why am I over here? Am I the only one going through something?
Yeah.
And this person is
Yeah.
Yeah.
just being blessed, blessed, blessed. No, this person just isn't sharing. They're only sharing the good, what's good in
Yes.
my
Yes.
life. They're not
Yeah.
telling anybody I was sexually violated, I was physically
Right.
abused. They're not
Yes.
saying, I'm grieving, I'm hurting, I'm suffering in silence,
Mm-hmm.
but they're putting on that smile. But we're
Yeah.
here, we're being bold and brave enough to share these trials and trauma so that people can have hope. So we're glad that you now see, oh, wait a minute, I'm not in this fight
Mhm.
alone.
Right.
Even listening
Right.
to, the co-authors in the book,
Yeah.
of After the Storm, it continues. You see how many people are struggling. Although, they're doing well, we're all going through something. So I'm
Yes.
I'm gonna end this
Yeah.
with pray
Yeah.
ye one for another. You are not
Amen.
in the fight alone. And whatever
Amen.
you're going
Amen.
through, whatever storm you are going through, please know that you can reclaim your life.
Yes.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
love you,
Yes.
Kimberly.
Thank
Thank
you. I
you.
love you too. All righty. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, testing.